Okay, cool. All right. So what we're gonna be talking about is the retirement stuff. I also have a podcast on Mondays called Financial University, FU, which is the tribe. And by the way, if you have an FU hat, people don't think Florida; they just flip you off, which is really weird, especially in a Whole Foods parking lot. So it's kind of strange. But um, if you like what I'm talking about and you want to hear more of me, there's more raw, uncut me on Mondays. And so we're gonna dive into it. The Let's see. One of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit later is the CARES Act, because the timing of this is pretty important given it's almost the end of the year and this actually expires in about 7 weeks. So really important if it applies to you to do something. And ironically, the first slide is about doing something, and it's the 30 seconds that matter. It's all these times in our life when we have choices to make where we can do something or just wait. And tonight might be one of those times. They generally happen on a regular basis. I have one that I like to share, and it was back in 2019. No, it was 18, where I got a call to go, and I was invited to see some silverbacks in Africa, and it took me about 13 seconds to say yes, please, and I had no idea when or where. I ended up going, and when I went, this is what it looked like. And I bring this up because there are moments in our lives that happen all the time where we're at a crossroads and it's a yes or no. And you can do the yes men Jim Carrey movie where you say yes to everything, which fills up your time and space, or you can say no to everything. Most people kind of do one or the other. I just encourage you all to when you have those opportunities to do something, and I'll give you a chance to take a little action here. And we're going to run to the back of the room, and y'all are going to sign up for. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just going to give you a chance to do something and practice the muscle, because it really is a muscle. I mean, you guys at hosting, you took action. You created this thing, and so everybody has a chance to. Diane, I think you were asking some great questions, and those are questions that lead to action. And so, really, that's what we're going to talk about: some action that y'all can take to do what I'm all about, which is breaking some shackles. By the way, this is what the silverback look like when you sit there for 15 minutes, like 16 inches away. It's kind of amazing. The alternative to not doing those things is you're going to have some really bad tattoos, and bad tattoos are terrible. So is regret. And this is important because if there's an alternative to taking action, and it's having a very, very bad conversation with yourself or with other people, like I did in 2013 when my dad got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. He called me and told me on Thanksgiving, and I flew up the next day to Alaska. I was actually out in New York, Jersey, and I got the call, flew back to Alaska, and we sat down, and he looked at me and he said, there were so many things that I wanted to do. And I remember it was like this piercing, it was a warning. It was like, it was tattooed on my heart and my soul that this is not what I wanted to do. And I think if we really thought about it, none of us wants to do that. What we want to do is have the ability and the practice to make the decisions and not have that conversation, which is the regret conversation. And the reason I think that happened in large part was because over my dad's lifetime, he didn't spend the 10,000 hours. This is where this came from Malcolm Gladwell with the idea of developing mastery. He didn't spend 10,000 hours in anything. He kind of just went from one thing to the next, which is what almost all the population is doing right now with social media. They're bouncing from one thing to the next. Even with investing, we're just doing one thing and then we do the next thing, but we're not really going deep with anything. So we don't really build any momentum or traction. And so you're not really going to get into any type of mastery where you're going to develop depth if you don't do that. This is, by the way, is one of my favorite books. It's George Leonard's book on mastery. There's another one called Mastery by Robert Greene. This is my favorite because he's an Aikidoka, which is an Aikido practitioner. And if you look behind me, you can see some martial arts stuff where it's kind of what I did. In fact, the next slide is me doing a demo. I bring this up because I've spent 10, 15,000 hours studying martial arts. And when you do anything that long, you develop a sense of stillness and calm and confidence because it becomes a part of who you are. 15,000 hours of martial arts makes everything look fake. It's like choreographed, but it's just because it's like walking. You don't really think about it and it looks graceful, usually, unless you have gum. But the other thing I did, I spent a bunch of time in real estate back starting in the 90s. And when I say 90s, I'm talking New Year's Eve 1999 is when I bought my first house. So barely in the 90s. This is what I did over 5 years. I built a portfolio, and I did it starting by buying a house with my credit card. And I don't really say this to impress anybody other than to impress upon you the fact that I get it, like I've done it. And this is what it looks like if you go deep. If you just go and you hammer on anything, you can develop whatever you want if you give it enough time. And I mean, it was a pretty cool ride too, including my ride. my Will Smith ride from Bad Boys 2, my Ferrari, and it was awesome until 2008. And this is when everything got real, where I realized all I was doing was focusing on more money, and I wasn't really focusing on building a foundation. And so I'm going to encourage y'all to do something a little different, and that's going to be to make sure you have a different why, which is what I found myself figuring out in 2008, 9, 10, shifting from just more money to more something. And the reason that's important is because if it's money, it's never going to be enough. Like I made $1 million, then I needed to be a multimillionaire, then I needed to make 5 million, then I needed to go to 10. And it sounds cool and fun and everything, but I can tell you, and most people will say the same thing if they have a heart and a soul, that it can't just be the money, or you'll end up being really depressed and you'll end up using substances or just living a life of kind of quiet desperation. This is why I do this. This is why I am here with you guys. It's because the mission is not more money. It's to break financial bondage. It's a million people's financial shackles. And I really look at this. I look at finance as modern day slavery, that when we don't have control of our money, when it's controlling us, when we don't understand how money works. And I'm going to give you some other insights into how I think money is evolving a little later. But if we don't get that, then we're going to be in shackles our whole life. So I'm doing what I do to break more shackles. The money follows mission. It really, truly does. If any of you have done anything that's mission based and you focus on it long enough, it's interesting how money is a side effect. And if you chase money, it's just always a chase. It's like being at a dog park and there's a rabbit that goes around in circles. You're never going to catch it. Here's the thing that I want to make sure y'all are really, really focused on, and that is the IRS, because the IRS is not your friend, but you can understand the rules and make it a non-event. The reason it's not your friend is because if you don't understand the rules, you're going to end up working until Labor Day every year, paying 70% of your life's earnings, your sweat, blood, and tears. It's going to be going away because you're simply not playing the game. The game is set up so that you go from paying 70% to zero. And people say, well, wait, I've heard this is like a socialist communist thing going on, that if you don't pay taxes, you're not patriotic. That's the exact opposite. The reality is that the government wants you to pay no taxes because it forces you. If you're going to do that, one of two things: either one, you're homeless and you're like living on the streets, or two, you're creating jobs, you're building real estate, you're investing in real estate, you're doing things the government sucks at, which is most everything. But bottom line is, zero is very possible if you understand the rules. It requires you to think differently. It requires you to think a totally different way than the masses, than the media, than what you've been taught growing up. And when you think differently, you can start investing differently, because you'll be seeing things totally different. This is what we're going to talk about specifically. It's a tool. It's called the eQRP, and it's a different tool to invest. It's not the investment itself. That's what Joseph and Nico talk about and are doing. It's about having the right vehicle. It's like if you're going to go on vacation, you got to make sure you're in the right vehicle. You don't want to go out, in the middle of winter on a motorcycle unless you have like you're going to go through the Rockies. You want to have something that has a roof, like the right vehicle, and then you decide where you're going to go and what experience to have. The eQRP, the Enhanced Qualified Retirement Plan, is a type of vehicle, and it's not just a vehicle, but it's a different energy. And I'm going to get into this a little bit, that not everything is built the same. The eQRP is about the energy of self-responsibility. It's not about victims and blaming and justifying. Like, that's great if you have an IRA or a 401k in mutual funds. You can blame the stock market. You can blame Trump or Biden or whoever you want. And it's very much a victim mentality. On the other side, you can shift, and you can have total control of your money, and you can be responsible. So if it does well, it's up to you and it's your fault. If it does poorly, it's still your fault. So different mindset, which is why this is really not for everybody. The question that comes up a lot, people will say, well, who's this not for? And I'm like, victims. And people are like, well, who's that? I'm like, most of the population. Like, you look at all the people that are out there victimizing and blaming, this is not for them. This is for people that are showing up on a Wednesday night to learn. I mean, that's what this is for. And I call it the Ferrari of 401ks. Why? Because I used to have a Ferrari, and I got that because I thought that was the coolest vehicle on the planet. It's because it's fast and you have absolute control of where you want to go, and there's nothing like it. It's people sometimes say, well, isn't an eQRP a solo 401k? And I go, that's like saying a Ford is a Ferrari. They're both cars. And so, 401ks, IRAs, 457, solo 401ks, eQRPs, they're all retirement accounts. They all have different ways that they're built. They're written different, and you have different things you can do with them. So I'm going to get into the nuance for you. I just wanted to make sure you understand that there is no equal. This is the ultimate in terms of retirement accounts options that are out there. And one of the reasons this is really important is because there's so much money. In fact, all the liquidity in the country, true liquidity, is sitting in these retirement accounts. We're talking 30 plus trillion that's just sitting there. And it's yours, it's your friends, it's your family. And these questions about, well, how do I get my money investing? Most people don't think about their 401ks or IRAs. They're just thinking about their extra cash. This is a place where most people have the ability to invest and actually start taking control of their future and breaking their shackles. So it's, I mean, it's important to know about this because this is where people's future is. It's unlocking all that money that's in Wall Street jail. The biggest question people have usually is why they haven't heard of it, because it seems too good to be true. And I mean, that's pretty simple because Wall Street doesn't want you to know. The wolves do not want to tell you how to unlock your money so that they can lose the fees and the control. Wall Street thinks, and it's funny because I never know if somebody's watching or y'all are listening and somebody's like a stockbroker or financial advisor. And the reality is most financial advisors are in this game for themselves. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality. And there are good ones, but it's about fees. And it's interesting how many times we've worked with people and they say, my financial advisor is my friend. And I go, let's see how much of a friend it is. And they go, I want my money. And the financial advisor turns out to be their arch villain nemesis. And they treat them like they're an idiot as soon as they want their own money. So it's unfortunate, but that's why you don't know about it. It's because Wall Street's never going to tell you about it. And the marketing machine behind Wall Street is never going to tell you. You're going to find out because of people that are hosting this, and it's because they actually care. So the eQRP is a checkbook for your retirement money. It allows you to have investments, invest with speed. It works whether you're by yourself, whether you have a job, whether you have employees, part-time, full-time. It's super dynamic. So if you think you're a good candidate, if you think you're responsible enough to have control of all your money, then you could absolutely do it. It doesn't have transaction fees like IRAs do and 401ks and almost anything out there. It's protected from lawsuits. And if y'all have ever been to, any city, probably in America right now, and you look around at buses, billboards, and bus stops, you see signs, and they pretty much all say, if you've been hurt, call me. We'll sue somebody. If your feelings have been hurt, we'll take them down. And it's an unfortunate part of being a victim. People think that that's how they get wealthy, taking. So it's important that your retirement account is lawsuit protected, which many aren't. They don't have very good protections. It has a $50,000 credit line, which means if you want to go borrow $50,000 and do whatever, like you want to go do a personal real estate deal, you can borrow $50,000. I started my real estate career in 99 using a cash advance on a credit card, which I don't condone. I don't suggest you do this. That was a pretty stupid idea. But I did it and I took that money out. And so if you had access to $50,000, I can tell you that you have all the money in the world that you need to go create wealth in real estate. But it requires sweat and it requires thinking. So that's incredible. It also goes with the next point about unlimited debt. With an eQRP, there's unlimited amounts of debt that you can use, and that's incredibly important. With real estate, that's why we like real estate so much, because you can leverage it. It's not like stocks where it has to be all your cash. And there's a really important piece about this I'm going to get to in a second about why that makes the eQRP an IRA killer and why it's so important that you use the right one. Otherwise, you're going to get taxed. In addition to the real estate, you have a lot of options that you can participate in, invest in, whether it's real estate in the US, you can do it globally. It can be land, apartments, houses, really anything. Notes, if you want to lend money out, it's pretty great to be the bank and have money coming to you versus just bills in your mailbox. You can invest in physical gold. So you can take possession of gold that your retirement account buys with tax deferred money. What that kind of means is that instead of, if you like gold, which I happen to like gold a lot, if you want to buy gold, you can use pre-tax money. You don't have to pay taxes and then buy gold. It's kind of like the government giving you a 20 or 30% subsidy on gold, which is very cool. The other thing that you can do, or what the way the IRS works, they tell you what you can't do, and then really it's anything other than that. One of the things that a lot of people are doing, and I think it's very smart, is to get exposure to crypto, and especially Bitcoin, because it's the whale right now. It has a $250+ billion market capitalization. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are going to be how our money works going forward. It's going to be digitized. It's likely that we're going to see something, I think in the next year, we're going to see China launch their centralized cryptocurrency, partially backed by gold, to take on the US dollar. All that means is that we're going to have a currency war, and it's going to be a digital war. And so either you understand what's going on and you get in front of it, or you're going to get run over by it, because it is happening and it's coming. So just a food for thought. I think it's really important. If you don't know anything about crypto and Bitcoin, learn as fast as you can. Few things that you can't do with an eQRP in real estate, or sorry, retirement accounts in general. You can't invest with any your kids, your parents, anybody up or down on a family tree. You can't invest in property that you're going to use today, but you could invest in like a lake house or a piece of property that you wanted to retire into, because you would just use it as an investment property today and then distribute it to yourself down the road. And I can show you how to do that tax free too. Disqualified things are any collectibles. So rugs, wine, cars. People, you can't flip a car. Some people like to do that. I don't know why, but they do. And wine, probably pretty obvious, because if the IRS said you can invest in wine, people would be broke and hungover at 60, and so they don't let them do that. Okay, self-directed IRAs versus eQRPs. This is like WrestleMania or something. It's like the slam. Most people know what IRAs are, but they don't have any idea what an eQRP is, and you're going to realize why that can be incredibly expensive and painful. Ultimately, the IRAs are super limited. You've got a custodian involved, versus which is somebody else. It can never be you, versus an eQRP where you're in charge. It's fast. You're the trustee. With IRAs, you've got UBIT tax, meaning if you have any type of investment in real estate with any type of debt, there's going to be a UBIT tax eventually. And with an eQRP, it's exempt, no tax. I'll show you some examples of that. IRAs, you can only put $6,000 in a year. And I mean, that doesn't really get you anywhere except old. Like 20 years of $6,000 a year, 100 grand, whoop-de-doo. Like that's not going to make you're not going to be good. eQRP, you could put 50 plus thousand a year. So over 20 years, you're talking $1 million plus per person. If you had a spouse, if you have kids, you could put 200,000-300,000 a year into it. And if you go, well, I'm not making 200,000 or 300,000. Well, that's great. Let's raise your goals. And then you've got a vehicle that you can actually park a ton of money in and grow it tax free. Here's a deal that one of my friends out in Austin did. It was a medical complex syndication from dirt up, where he basically got the dirt and then built this complex. And it was a $50 million deal. So $10 million in investor cash and $40 million in debt. This is a pretty typical developer deal with a seasoned developer. It's about 80% in many cases. So 5 years later, this deal had $5 million in cash flow, sold for $85 million bucks. Overall, looking pretty good, $40 million in total profit. So people are happy, except the IRA investors that invested in it. And the IRA investors that invested made 100,000 on their 100,000. And the problem is that 80% of their profit, because 80% of the deal was leveraged, had debt, was hit with UBIT tax. And so they were paying between $20,000 and $29,000 in tax because with their IRA. So people go, well, wait, I thought my IRA was a tax shelter. My Roth IRA, actually, there are taxes that are sitting inside that thing if you don't know better. It's this thing that the IRS did. They said, hey, if you're using somebody else's money, debt, and your IRA money, we're going to charge you. It's up to 37% tax. It's the highest tax rate that I know of in the code. And it's because of UDFI, unrelated debt financed income. So the income that's coming, your profits, because of the financed part of it, you get crucified. Here's the difference. We're talking $11 million in this deal, potentially in taxes. So not happy people if they're IRA investors, because they're paying up to $29,000 per $100,000 they invested. And eQRP investors, on the other hand, are paying zero. So if you're paying this, you're paying $29,000, it's stupid. And if you know that you can do something different, then you're stupid, or you hate your money. It's not that anybody that's paying it is stupid if they don't know, but once you have the information, it's like, it's a no brainer. You switch, and so you don't have to pay it. And if somebody is going to pay it and you know better, you got to do the right thing and tell them. And it's because the eQRP is exempt from UDFI. There's a provision in the code that allows it to be exempt. And it was because lobbyists for developers went and had the code tweaked so that they could get money. Developers could get money from pensions and these big retirement accounts. They needed it for all their big developments. But apparently the IRA custodians didn't have very good lobbyists. So there's no exemption there. One of my clients came out, I just met him. They came out, they became a client. They said, we got a deal. We just heard your talk and we've got a flip. We had a little bit of money, a bunch of hard money that added on to our IRA money. And here's our deal. We're going to sell it in about a week. And we're going to make $58,000. But we told our accountant, and our accountant said, we are going to have a problem. And I said, you got a tax problem? And they said, yeah, 20 grand. And I said, okay, so do you want to pay the 20? And they said, no. And I said, okay, well, let's switch it. Let's switch it to an eQRP. And they said, oh, great, let's do it. We did it. They got to keep the whole 58,000. It took like 15 minutes for us to have that conversation. So the next time you see Geico telling you you can save 15% in 15 minutes, this is a better deal for 15 minutes, $20,000. I mean, you'd have to have like a fleet of Lamborghinis to save 20,000 with Geico. Anyway, better 15-minute investment. It's because it's exempt. And so they got to be exempt right up to the, like literally we got their thing done, and it was a couple days later they closed, and it was, they got to keep the whole amount of money. So it's pretty amazing. If you are invested in a deal with a self-directed IRA, here's what we do. We take that investment and we move it. We just shift it, and we shift it from it's called an in-kind rollover. We move it over, and we pull it from the custodian, put it in the eQRP, retitle it, and we do all this. And then at that point, there's no tax. So it's kind of awesome, and it's totally an option if you want to, or you can just pay a lot of taxes, which is dumb. Okay, so who's qualified? Syndicators, if you're putting deals together, if you're self-employed, if you have an online business, any type of online business, eBay store, direct marketing, affiliate marketing, a lemonade stand in your front yard, or I guess frozen lemonade right now. Investors, if you property manage. Sometimes people say you can't do a retirement account like this if you're property managing, and I say that's BS. Property managers are people too. That is a job. And so you can do that. W-2s, if you have a job, and if you have a 401k or no 401k, you can have as many retirement accounts as you want. There is no limit. It's also one of those Google things. By the way, just a side note, if you're trying to get facts, Google is not your friend. Google will tell you whatever you want it to tell you. And so here's my suggestion. Go to experts. Invest your money with people that know what the hell they're talking about instead of Google, because Google is just going to send you down all sorts of rabbit holes. And it's unbelievable the opinions that people have, and they'll put them on the internet in blogs and things, and they don't know what they're talking about. So make sure you get competent advisors and team members and people that wrote the book on whatever you're trying to learn. If you have employees, part-time, full-time, you're qualified to do an eQRP and have one. You are not qualified to have a solo 401k, for example. So this is a unique environment that will allow anybody to have it work. And as you're changing your model, like if let's say you don't have any employees now, but then you hired somebody 10 hours a week, this goes along. It's dynamically adapting to you. So much better option to have something that is not a ticking time bomb as maybe your future retirement. The Secure Act, like I was alluding to a second ago, is change the rules. So any type of employee, part-time, full-time that you have or have in the future disqualifies any type of solo plan. And you can get a solo plan like at Schwab for free. And I mean, it's, it was a good way for people that wanted to go and throw $50,000+ into a retirement plan and get some tax breaks, but it didn't really solve the problem because you still had limits on what you can do. And it's further limited because of the Secure Act. So really kind of a big problem for a lot of people, and they don't even realize it because most people don't pay attention to legislation, like legislation nerds over here. So that's a big change with the Secure Act. Another big change was that they allowed us to set up retirement accounts retroactively. So like, let's say last year you made 200,000 and you said, oh shoot, I forgot to set up a retirement account, or I just didn't think I was going to make that much money. Mostly, almost totally, you can't do anything backwards. This is like one of those things, maybe the only thing, where you can set up a retirement account for the previous year, contribute for the previous year, and reduce your income tax. So in this example, if you did that, your income would lower down below the threshold for the QBI. So QBI is the qualified business income. It's basically if you have 157,000 or less in income, you get a 20% deduction. So in this case, it allows you to use these two things together, and you can actually knock your taxes down by another $20,000. So if you have team members that understand this stuff and you have great strategists, you can do a lot of good things if you use the right pieces of the puzzle. You just have to make sure that your tax strategist is a tax strategist and not just a tax return filer. Okay, so another thing that we have now, it's sort of like a perfect storm. It's a better perfect storm than the one that happened off of Maine in the movie where George Clooney died. Nobody dies here. It's where somebody in your household becomes a real estate professional, and you can literally get money out of a retirement account, tax-free, penalty-free, tax-free, get it out, tax-free, and use it for real estate and buy real estate and become financially free literally in the next 12 months. In this case, if you had a few $100,000, it would be a strategy to get money out of a retirement account by converting it and then pulling it out, investing it in real estate, and there would be no tax. And so we can talk about, if y'all have questions on that later, because usually people do on this one. It's a way to take all these different pieces of the tax code that are currently available and they go away. Like cost segregation and that mechanism is sunsetting between 2023 and 2026. So these strategies are not going to be around forever. They'll evolve. New ones will probably come up, but there's like a full-on frontal assault on wealth right now. And it's unfortunate, but you want to make sure you're doing things while you can before they go away. I think Roth accounts are probably going to go away at some point, where if you have them, cool. If you don't, too bad. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. Congress is always trying to find ways to spend money on entitlement and war, and they're going to take away other things like retirement accounts. And one of the things that Biden wants to do, if he ends up becoming the president, if you know his agenda is to change the 401k rules, so everybody's going to attack things that they don't agree with, and some people don't agree with people getting rich or free. So if y'all have kids, one of the neat things that happened with the tax bracket changes a few years ago is that kids can have their own tax bracket. So the first $12,200 of income for a kid or anybody else is tax free. If you have a business of any kind and you pay your kids for bona fide work, you could pay them $12,200 and they would not pay taxes at all. No Social Security, no income tax, which is pretty awesome because you got the tax deduction on your $12,000. They get the active income. And as soon as they have active income, they could actually contribute to a Roth eQRP. Now, Roth is after tax. Well, if your after tax is on zero taxed income, you just got a $12,000 deduction. And now you have money in an account that's going to grow tax-free forever. And you can pull that money out anytime you want. Any of that $12,000 can be pulled out at any age, no tax, no penalty. Just got to figure out how to pay your kids. That's me, by the way, that when I was like 5 and I was working as a model for JCPenney. And so a lot of people do pay their kids for modeling. Go to any dentist and you'll see pictures of kids on the wall. Ask somebody, are those the dentist kids? And almost every time it is yes, because the dentist is paying their kids to be models. No reason you can't do the same thing. Okay, getting money into your eQRP. You can roll over money, IRAs, 401ks, thrift savings plans if you're government or you've had government money, 403bs, 457s, teachers, firefighters, everything. Unlimited numbers of them. Contributions, you can put $57,000 per person per year. It could be Roth or deferred. There's no income limit, meaning you can't make too much and get disqualified like you can with an IRA. So way, way different. Okay, CARES. This is the thing I alluded to, and many of you heard about this. Most people thought, oh, this is cool. This is a $1,200 check and some PPP money for my business. There was something in there that a lot of people didn't realize was there, which is the ability to pull up to $100,000 out of a current retirement account and do one of two things. No penalty. You can either keep it and pay taxes on that 100,000 or whatever number up to 100, pay taxes on a third of that each year, or you could roll it over and have control of it. So what a lot of people are doing is they're pulling money out, like from the thrift savings plan, the government or their 401ks, pull the 100,000 out, and then they're putting it into their eQRP. Now they can get out of the Wall Street roller coaster, the freaking casino, and they can start investing in real estate, things that they can control and understand. This has never happened before in history. I doubt it'll happen again in our lifetimes. But the reality is it's available for the next 7 weeks. It expires December 31st. So if you want to have some of your money in a retirement account get pulled out, you've got, weeks. And so really important to look at this because it is incredibly time sensitive. The other thing that's a part of the eQRP is the $50,000 credit line. Many 401ks have it, thrift savings plans have it, and it basically allows you to borrow money for whatever you want. And one of the nice things is that when you need money and you have access to it with your own account, you can actually get it. When I had a black card, my American Express black card, and this is like the card you get when you spend too much money because you're an idiot, which I was, and I was spending like $100,000 a month. They also give it to celebrities. I won't say anything more about that, but so people that have way too many spending patterns have these cards, and I had my card, so of course I was doing what natural black card holders do. I went to Costco to buy a pallet of toilet paper. And so I went to get this thing and I went to swipe my card and they came back and they said, it's declined. And I said, that's not possible. I can buy a jet on this thing. And they said, well, you're not buying toilet paper. So I called American Express and I said, what's up? And they said, you're at your limit. I said, I don't have a limit. There's no limit. They said, your limit is 11,000, which is what you currently owe on your card. I was in a real estate industry. I was a real estate investor at that time. And in 2008, real estate investors were starting to take losses on their American Express cards, defaulting. American Express froze everybody. And it didn't matter whether my account was in good standing. What I realized right then is that I was really vulnerable to banks and institutions freezing because my stuff, because I was living off of credit lines, which a lot of people are. I didn't know about any of this stuff back then. And if I had known about it, I wouldn't have really been that concerned because I would have just gone and taken $50,000 out of my eQRP and fine. It's nice when you have a credit line that can't be taken away. And that's one thing here. You just write yourself a check anytime you want. Barato Sicaro. And I don't know if Nico or Joseph, if y'all know how to, if you speak Portuguese. I certainly don't, but I speak 3 words, sort of, probably badly. Basically means cheap objects can be expensive. And here's what that means. It means Einstein was very smart when he said life's too short to argue with stupid people. We spend our so much time looking at people's opinions on the internet and listening to our friends and family and neighbors that are quite frankly ignorant. And the stuff that's on the internet, unfortunately, is not from authorities, it's from people with opinions, and everybody has them and they all smell bad, just like you know what. I'm amazed at how many people think that because it's on the internet in black and white that all of a sudden it's true, or that because your neighbor said something it's true. The reality is you want to make sure that you're around people that are smart, that are experienced, and just because somebody read a book doesn't mean that they know anything. It just means that they remember what they read. My thinking is that you want to you want to find people that are wiser. I tend to say go find bald gray people because like I got bald after I went through hell. And there's something to be said about that. Wisdom, it leaves a lot of scar tissue, and it helps you see around the corner. So if you're going to listen to people, I think it's great to be around people and listen to them, ask for their advice that have done it. Not just asking them, but paying for the advice. So one of the things people will do with their eQRPs is they'll take out a loan and they'll hire mentors and masterminds. They'll become a part of programs. It's a great use of money. There is no better investment. I don't care what apartment it is. There's no better investment that you'll ever make other than the investment in yourself. And so if you haven't done that yet, that's the thing you should invest in. People say, what should you invest in? What should I invest in? And I go, I don't know, you. So this is one thing. And then that way you don't have to have so much scar tissue and brain damage from all the dumb things that you'll do without the wisdom. I didn't understand that, so I got a lot bald. Here's the other thing that I did in 2010. I woke up one day and I went from 20 million to negative 5 million, and I denied it for about a year and pretended like everything was fine. And then eventually I woke up and I said, okay, something is wrong. And I did a lot of work on me, did a lot of coaching and therapy and things. And part of that process was I said, I need to have some rules, some guidelines. Like nobody goes to a football field and says, let's just go. Like there are actual rules, like, you know how to go and where the sidelines are. I didn't have any sidelines. I just had glands. Like everything was exciting or scary. And that's how I operated. If y'all don't have rules, that would be a great thing to do as part of your end of 2020 planning. Just have some rules. I don't care if you have 3 rules. Here are my top 3 rules that I like, my 3 Ps. This is before PPP. I have my own PPP. So self-responsible. This means I don't hang out or talk with people. I don't have clients. I don't have business partnerships. I don't invest with people that are not self-responsible. I have a filter because I don't like cheap people and I don't like victims. Like it's kind of gross. So I stay away from them. And that's one of my things. I spent a lot of time with the wrong people and I became a lot of those wrong people. And that's part of the problem. You have to be careful about your influences. I don't invest more than 5% of my portfolio, my money, in any one thing that I don't control. So I'll put more money into something that I control, but I'm really careful. And this doesn't work, by the way, if you have 50 or $100,000. I mean, it's not practical to say I'm going to invest $5,000 in a deal. If it's a house, you could do that. If it's a syndication, that's not going to happen. Joseph, you said earlier you were talking about deals 50 to 75,000 and such. That's pretty normal. So it's not uncommon for somebody to have 50 or $100,000 and they put all their money into a deal. Just make sure you know who you're investing with. I mean, that's the key. In fact, that is the key. It's not the deal, by the way. Any deal can look good on paper. The team is going to execute that thing and either make it really shiny or they're going to make it really smelly. So you make sure you're investing in the team. The last one it's actually kind of painful. I have a rule that I don't invest in places that require bulletproof vests. And that's because years ago, before the meltdown, I invested in a property in Memphis, right across from Elvis's place. It was in a place called Whitehaven out by Graceland. And about 6 months into the property, it was a 119 unit apartment complex that I was rehabbing, literally no tenants. And so I'm rehabbing. I had a team rehabbing it, and I was learning how to lose a lot of money on this deal. And I got a call, and they said, you get a problem. Your copper's gone. And I said, which copper? And they said, all of it. Somebody stole all the copper out of every unit in your complex. And I said, that sounds terrible. How much is that going to cost? And they said, about $250,000. So I had to go and fight with Lloyd's of London, which I learned is a terrible organization. And they're the ones that insure a lot of things because nobody else will insure them. And they do that because they oftentimes don't want to pay anything. Anyways, I ended up getting a little bit, about 40 cents on the dollar back from Lloyd's. And then I got a call, and they said, same people, my supervisors, they said, we got a problem. I said, what is it this time? They said, same problem. Copper got stolen. I'm like, how is that possible? I have an armed guard. Where is she? Where did she go? Is she there? And they said, she's dead. They killed her. And I remember just sitting there. I didn't really have, what do you say? That never happened before. And I said, oh my God. So going forward, I just made a rule. The rule is I don't want to ever have that happen again, because the weight of somebody's life on your shoulders, protecting your property, is a really heavy weight. And the reason that I would encourage y'all to borrow mine or somebody else's rules, if you don't know what rules to have, find somebody that's been through all of it or a lot of it and leverage off of their pain and the stuff that they did that was stupid or they just didn't know. And so I have that rule, and that's why I have no bulletproof vest areas as a rule. Here's the biggest concern in society. And it's, there's a lot of concerns, a lot of yap, a lot of people yelling about things nowadays, but really fundamentally, there's a problem with money and being in shackles, and people being afraid that they're going to get older and they're going to run out of money. This is the number one. It's boomers, it's millennials, it's Gen Z, Gen X, like it's everybody. So what do we do about that? Well, we spend time on Wednesday nights learning how to not be one of those people, and then doing something about it. You can't think your way into financial freedom. Like, I know The Secret and all those people suggested that you can just will yourself into having bags of money fall from the sky, but they're morons. That doesn't happen. You actually have to go do something. Here's what you can do. You can start doing what you're doing right now, which is learning, and then take that information and share it with people. And what happens is when you share it, it's kind of like love. When you love somebody, it doesn't take it away from you. It actually expands the love. And so if you take this information and you share it with somebody, you kind of become their superhero when you give them the ability to not be enslaved to money anymore. So how do you do that? I mean, simplest way is take your phone and text the word eQRP to 72,000, and a copy of the report I wrote, which is a summation of the book and has the CARES Act stuff in it, is going to be sent to your phone. Once you have that, read it, share it. I mean, some of you may not have retirement accounts, may not even like retirement accounts. I guarantee you know people with retirement accounts. And when you give them options, you're going to be the best thing since sliced bread for a lot of them, because they're going to realize that they're not stuck in the Wall Street casino anymore. And it really does change the game when you have control of your money. You're not just hoping it works. I always say that's like smoking a bunch of hopium. Maybe you'll wake up and have something. You're just going to be old and tired and frustrated in all likelihood. So that's kind of what it is. I mean, either you text or you're going to end up with a bad tattoo. So that's kind of all I've got. Nobody wants that. Maybe Nico does. Nico, you want a bad tattoo?
Please, I've been begging for it.
So if y'all have questions, I'm happy to hang out and whatever I can do to help, just throw them out there. But hopefully that was useful and informative and a lot of information to scramble your brains.
Yeah, that was awesome, Damion. Always awesome. I really love your presentation. Jokes are phenomenal, man. I'm sitting here laughing. I was on mute, but I was laughing, man. I like them. And it's funny, you actually touched upon a question that one of our guests had earlier, and it was in the realm of taxes, and because of the fact that the cost segregation, like you said, is going to be disappearing in the next X amount of years. You by investing with this eQRP, that doesn't even affect you, right?
It's actually a huge point that people need to really think about. Cost segregation is fun, but it's also like heroin, because well, I say that I don't know what heroin's like, but I presume it's a bad substance that you get addicted to, and it's kind of like, my friend Peter Schiff talks about this, where you don't give alcoholics alcohol to deal with their hangover if you want to get them off of alcohol. Like, you have to cut it loose. The problem with cost segregation is that, like in deals, if it's a 5-year deal, it sounds great because there's no taxes, but then there's recapture on the end of that deal. And in an eQRP, you buy the thing, you don't care what happens with the tax code because you're not paying taxes, and you can set it up so you never pay taxes and you can spend the money. The problem with a lot of things is that your money is stuck and you can't actually spend it, or you can't ever get it out. And in here, you don't have to worry about it. It's a permanent tax-free shelter, which is, I don't know that it gets any better than that.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, let's open it up. Anybody have any questions?
Diane, did your brain melt? Just checking.
Oh, you're muted, Diane. So
Sorry, it's a lot of information. Thank you. I'm just absorbing it.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
You know, if you haven't absorbed it in the last 44 minutes, then really it's too late. Like this.
That's
I mean,
it. I'm done.
You know, it's funny because I've been in the middle of this world for a decade, and this is all I've been doing for a decade, and I just take stuff for granted, but it's a lot, and processing the stuff is hard. So you have to it's like a huge puzzle, and I just threw all the pieces at you, and you had to grab them and put them together in the air. So
Right.
I get it, and that's why I gave you guys my number too, and you know, and the resources. So take what you like, use it, don't use it, but it's part of the puzzle to take money out of the equation. That's all it really is.
Thank you. But look, I downloaded it.
See? So I'm
I'll
talking
show it
about
to my
30
husband
seconds.
tomorrow.
It's great.
So we have Joe's the mayor have a question. Is the only way to move money from a 401k that is with an existing employer the 100,000 withdrawal that is currently allowed?
No, there's a couple other ways. One is if you're over 59 and a half, you usually can pull money out. And there's also, it's called an in-service rollover option where you can pull money out while you're still there. Almost nobody allows it because here's one of the sneaky, scary, stupid facts that's a little spooky and just, it's kind of criminal, but there's a lot of kickbacks between Wall Street and employers. And so if you were able to pull your money out while you were still working there, it reduces the fees that are paid to the Wall Street and potentially to the employers. So unfortunately, it's pretty unlikely. And so, I mean, that's just kind of how it is. Reading this question from Lamb.
Oh, okay.
Please confirm this tax strategy. Invest into pre-tax deferred component to take business deduction. While invested, get real estate professional status, convert to Roth as real estate professional, and convert at 0% tax bracket with tax-free. So here's how this works. It's pretty close. The idea is you get money into your retirement account, and then you can, if you convert it, and the same year you convert it, you have personal real estate that you can have cost segregation come to you as an expense or a loss. You can offset the income from the conversion. And so the other part of that, if you go, well, I don't have any money to actually buy real estate personally, you can pull money out of a Roth account. As soon as you convert it, you can pull it out because it's basis, no taxes, no penalties for that pullout, and use that money to buy real estate. So, I mean, it's kind of, let's see if she's catching all this. Just checking, just making sure. It's like a crazy thing that I've never heard anybody talk about. And if they are, good for them because it needs to be talked about more. Of course, you also don't want to scare Congress into changing the rules, but who knows? They'll probably change it anyway. Bottom line is taxes are optional. That's what I'm getting at.
Lam, did it answer your question?
Yes, it did. So essentially, by using this strategy, you can save in taxes up front and also benefit from the back end as well too.
Yeah, you can eliminate the taxes altogether. I mean, there's truly a way to eliminate the taxes because what you're doing is the whole idea of the tax code, and I think y'all were talking about this. The idea is that the government wants us to buy property and then keep it. They don't want us to buy and sell stuff. So if you're buying stuff and you keep it and it's paying you cash flow, the system and the tax code is set up so you're not paying taxes. And this is a way to get money out of a retirement account so you can actually spend it. So if you didn't want to wait till 60, you could absolutely start benefiting from it today at any age.
Okay. And I know you had alluded to the liability protection that the eQRP will afford you. Is that because it's wrapped into a Wyoming LLC? Is that the strategy?
That's part of it. So there's a Wyoming LLC that's inside of it that provides protection. And it's interesting because I had an attorney, and I do have things against attorneys. I was going to say nothing against attorneys, but there's just so many idiotic attorneys that have their Juris Doctorate and they're total buffoons. And they'll say things with authority like they know because they're an attorney. But a single member LLC in Wyoming, statutorily, because of Wyoming, is protected. And you're not going to be able to get through it. Wyoming and Nevada have specific legislation that's in place for that. So you've got that as protection. And if you happen to have a part-time employee, which could be your kid, by the way, then you have ERISA protection, and there's no way anybody's getting through those, either one of those, but especially both of those. So you've got some stuff built into this that is different. IRAs and individual 401ks that are out there don't have those same protections. They're limited by state. And so depending on the state, California, you're basically screwed. Places like Texas, you have more protections. But the truth is, there's just a lot of misinformation. And so to answer your question, that is part of it. It's built differently. It's written differently. And you've got ERISA is probably the most powerful protection that's out there. Like you're just not going to get in, you're not going to get past ERISA if you've got that coverage. And ERISA is what started retirement accounts, IRAs and 401ks back in 1974.
Gotcha. And you're specifically referring to Wyoming and Nevada because of the charging order protection. Is that correct?
Exactly right.
Awesome. Thank you.
The other thing about Wyoming, just a side note, and I'm not an attorney, thank God, but the reality is Wyoming is the only place, they started LLCs in 1977. They are the only place where it's totally anonymous. And so, unless you hire an attorney to be your proxy or something, which gets incredibly expensive, Wyoming, you can have an entity for a few $100 that is literally totally anonymous. Nobody can find you. If you go to wikicorp.com and somebody has entities, you can see all their stuff. So there is no privacy. Wyoming actually still has privacy. Statutorily, you cannot get to the owner of an entity unless you get a court order to go to the registered agent. And then you'd even have to know who you were going after. Like you'd have to go. So it's really important. There's some great asset protection attorneys, and I'm sure y'all have some of those names. If you don't, I'm happy to share those. But they generally are going to Wyoming, sometimes Nevada, and sometimes Delaware, sometimes even Alaska. But it's for specific things. Most people are using Wyoming because it's so smart.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Vince, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, so is there a minimum you have to contribute to an eQRP, or do you roll in payments if you have a W-2 job?
So there's no minimum that you have to put in it. There's no minimum that you have to roll over into it. So depending on what you're trying to do, you can take old retirement accounts, put them in. You can put IRAs in. Income that you're going to contribute as a new contribution is based on self-employment. So any W-2 income you have from an employer is not going to be money you can put in there. Sometimes the question people will have is, and I think it's a good question, like when does it make sense to have it? Somebody has $20,000 or $30,000. And my answer is, it depends on what you're going to do. Are you willing to hustle? Because when I started, I had $6,000 that I borrowed from Visa, and I turned that into $20 million. So it doesn't really matter how much money you guys have. It matters how much you're willing to engage. If you're using the checkbook between your ears, you have all the money in the world. And that's a fact. I mean, I did it. So I can tell you that with authority. That has nothing to do with how much money you have. If you seed an account, if you seed an eQRP inside the Roth and you put $5,000 in it, I can show you a game plan for the next 10 years to turn that 5,000 into multiple millions. There's a formula. It's just how it is.
So you would have to create an LLC first, and then since you're self-employed, then make the eQRP. Is that how it would work?
No, it's any entity, including you as a sole proprietor. So, I mean, you could go mow a lawn. I mean, here's how simple this is. You could mow a lawn, charge, probably today with inflation, it's $2,000 to mow a lawn anymore. But anyway, let's say it's $50. You get $50 and you just put it in your plan. And then you take that $50 and you go put a house under contract, and then you flip the contract, you wholesale it. You take that $50, you turn it into 5,000. How do I know you can do that? Because I've done it. And so it's things like that where you're using your brain and you're getting creative. So $50 from lawn mowing turns into 5,000. That 5,000 turns into 50,000. And it's, if you do conventional stuff and you go, I need to make 7% a year and that's my plan, you're dead. You got to be smarter and use leverage. And it's other people's time, it's other people's money, their experience, it's all that stuff.
And then I was also just wondering, so currently my W-2 job, I have a Roth account right now. Was that a mistake? Because I've paid taxes already on it.
No, not at all. That's awesome, because when you leave that job at some point, you're going to be able to roll it over. You could roll it over directly from a Roth 401k into a Roth eQRP. Having a Roth is a great thing.
Okay.
A lot of people say, here's the idea that Wall Street tries to brain damage you into thinking that you want to, and financial advisors and whoever else, they say, get a tax deduction now and then grow this money and compound it and get all that extra money growing, and then you'll pay taxes down the road. It'll be better because when you're older and you pull the money out, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. And I go, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So they're telling me I'm going to be broke and poor when I retire. That's the thing. I'm going to be in the highest damn tax bracket there is. So It's the stupidest advice I've ever heard. So no, being Roth right now is super smart. Tax rates will go up. Mark my words. They're going up. They're not going down.
Right.
So no, that's great. Good job.
Thanks.
You guys should hear me on Financial Underdogs. I really get going.
Okay, so any more question?
I didn't want to hog Damion. I do have one more question, and it's not for me. My dad is a business owner, and he owns his commercial building, and is 60, looking to retire someday. Really doesn't have a plan for that other than selling the business, selling the building, that sort of stuff. I imagine he's going to pay a lot of taxes when he does that to start his retirement and buy his retirement home. Is this an answer to some of that, since he's already self-employed?
It might be. What the eQRP is it's a tool, and it's like, I don't know who I'm talking to if y'all love or hate guns, but it's like a gun. A gun can be a great tool because it can actually feed your family, or you can shoot yourself in the foot. So an eQRP is the same thing. It can be a great tool or totally something you don't want to use. In your dad's case, what he needs more than anything is a team. If you're thinking about trying to figure it out, it's more about strategy than just one tool. What I find is that most people that have things to sell, their thing is your answer, like no matter what. And not everybody, but that is a very common thing. If I sell insurance, insurance is the answer. If I sell houses, houses are the answer. So a team, and this is where paying for advice is really important. Like I love my firm, my Provision team. They're in Arizona. They're the tax strategists. I can't wait to write them a check. It makes me happy. And that seems crazy. Most people are like, I got to write an attorney a check or an accountant a check. But having those type of people, it's an investment. When you think about the money you spend on super smart advisors, the return on that is ridiculous. So my advice with your dad is really make sure you get some great strategists, not just somebody that you've known for 40 years, which is what a lot of people do, but do some homework for them and maybe even interview some people and say, I think Nico probably has some people, Yosef probably has some people, but talk to some people that are really, really smart about strategy. There's a lot of strategy around exiting businesses so you don't get killed. You can do employment contracts to try to push things out so you don't have a big event with taxes and capital gains shifting. Like there's a lot of stuff out there. And so you just need some great people to strategize with you.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Good.
Thank you very much, Damion. We could slowly wrap up. It was great. And how people can reach you other than your cell phone?
So you can text. And so Diane's like the winner. I think she won that one. Good job. The other thing is you can go and you can go to the website, eqrp.co, and there's a place where you can get a copy of the book, the QRP book. And so that's a great way to call me directly, text me directly, go to the website. So this is one of the cardinal rules you don't do. Like I do a lot of podcasts, and you give people one thing to do. Otherwise, like their brain explodes and their eyes glaze over. They're like 50 things to do. I don't care what you do. Just do whatever suits you. I'm just going to, I'll help you whichever direction you want to go. But I would get a copy of the book and see if it's a good fit. And another tool for you.
Thank you very much.
Happy to do it. Appreciate you guys being out here tonight. And again, thanks for hanging tight and letting me show up a little bit later than we thought I would be here.
No, that, you know what, it was totally worth it, man. And just by looking at people definitely have questions. So I think that, guys, with those questions, formulate them, shoot them over to Damion. He gets back to you quick. Really good guy to talk to. Yeah, Damion, man, thank you so much. I think it was perfect timing, to be honest with you, because we were having conversations about what you led into. So I think it all worked out in the end.
Good. I appreciate that. I threw my email up there too, so feel free to shoot me an email directly. I like the text because if you're like me, you get like 8 billion emails a day, and we all pay attention to our texts, so I won't miss it. So if I don't email you back, just text me and say, hey, don't ignore me. I have a question.
Great. Thank you very much, Damion.
All right,
Thank you again, everyone, for coming tonight and spending time with us.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank
All right,
you. Bye.
We'll
Thank
see you again.
you. Bye-bye.
Isla.
Bye, James.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you.